Hi, this is Random Rob. Welcome back to the new show. Today I'm talking about my favorite Far Cry game, and I thought this would be a good game to talk about first-person games in general, what I think makes them really effective and what I think doesn't. My personal history with the Far Cry games from Crytek. First one I can remember playing, I believe, was called Far Cry Primal Instincts on the original Xbox, which was a streamlined version of the first Far Cry, but with the addition of beast powers and some crazy boss battles. And I remember enjoying it a hell of a lot. Far Cry 2, I first played on the PS3, was not a game I loved immediately, although as the years have gone by, I think it's probably one of the best first-person shooters ever made, specifically because of its tone and realism with regard to what mercenary combat in a third world country is like, i.e. messy, ugly, morally ambiguous. A lot of points to that game for how dark the portrayal of the material was. So not too long ago, I picked up Far Cry Primal on Steam, and mostly wanted to try it out because it was a game that was bringing back beast powers, and because I thought a caveman setting might be fun for a game. And I have to tell you, the more I play Far Cry Primal, the more I think it's one of the best first-person shooters, even if it's really not a shooter, unless you count, bow and arrow shooting. Just compared to so many other games in the field right now, it is easily one of my favorites. I love the setting, the graphics are beautiful. Just playing a game where you don't come across any standardized architecture, modern architecture, is a plus. All of the behaviors of the animals is really well thought out. I like, for example, how when you kill a gazelle, you spill blood in an area, any predators that are nearby are going to come right after you. I just think that's a great touch. It makes every kill you do a lot more intense when you may have to deal with a bear all of a sudden. In fact, I'd just say just best bear battles in a video game, except maybe with the exception of The Long Dark, where they're really not battles at all. And I have to agree with the Lazy Game reviewer when he was talking about Far Cry Primal and mentioning the problem of what Jim Sterling calls ubification, or ubification, that Ubisoft has at this point come up with a formula for open world games that's always very large and very expansive, but often very uninteresting or compelling. And the great thing here about Primal is this is one game where you really don't feel saddled with having to fulfill the plot requirements, except of course to get the next set of abilities. It's the first open world game I can remember playing in a long time where I really feel like exploring the map and looking around, if for no other reason to find new places to hunt from. The fact that there is nobody bugging you on a radio the entire game is a definite plus. The fact that no one speaks English is a definite plus. Also, one of the first games I can remember playing in a while where it feels good to turn the entire HUD off. Let's turn everything off and just play naked. It's definitely a game that, if you're like me and are kind of weary of the first-person genre at this point, I would definitely give Far Cry Primal a look, because it just feels wholly different from what the genre is currently built on. My favorite first-person shooters are almost invariably the ones where you start as a nobody. I am usually much less interested in modern military first-person shooters. That is, unless they have a particular historic angle and can give you a sense of what certain real-life combat situations were like. A good example of that would be Call of Duty World at War, which I thought was a fantastic first-person shooter, and specifically because it helped you to understand how terrifying some of the engagements in World War II were, like the Battle of Stalingrad or the trench warfare in the Pacific Isles. I mean, World at War at times felt like a borderline horror game. The level of detail they had, whether it was using a flamethrower on a room full of people and having them still running around and screaming on fire, or watching a soldier turn into a plume of blood when they got hit by close machine gun fire, which is something that really happens. Yeah, props for Call of Duty for making World War II a properly bloody and frightening game. Something that really annoys me, and I noticed it recently when I was playing Rage 2, is when a sequel is done for a game that's not a modern military game, but reformats the story and the main character as a military character in a fantasy setting or a futuristic setting. And then that strategic military theme takes over the storytelling, where everything is a scripted mission instead of just randomly walking into situations and protecting yourself with a weapon. There just seems something lazy about it, just in terms of writing. In the original Rage, you start as a person who's a nobody. You're an ARC survivor. You have nanites, which allow you one special power at the start of the game. But essentially you begin as a stranger in a strange land. That appealed to me in Rage, as well as the game's specific Western feel, and also its art style. And even today, I think if you boot up the original Rage, that game just had a really nice look to it. Even if it wasn't the deepest game, wasn't the longest game, it had this really wonderful visual style to it. You know, every character had a unique look to them. So imagine my disappointment booting up Rage 2, and instead of the character who's a nobody, you're now like a military nobody who's part of a resistance to fight against the authority, and a map full of stuff to do, and somebody yelling at you on a radio, and They literally took everything about Rage that made it a different kind of shooter game and just pushed it off to the side and made another generic shooter out of it with powers and, admittedly fun combat. The combat was never the reason I enjoyed playing Rage. The reason I enjoyed playing Rage was the distinctiveness of the world, which in the new game doesn't really have much distinctiveness. I'm not against military shooter design. I love Tom Clancy games for the most part, and I really love the Sniper Elite series. I just don't like the templating of military action over something that doesn't necessarily need to be military themed. Just because you have a gun, you need to be a part of an army. And I like a shooter when it's based around a good story, more than I do that it's based around strategy and tactics. If I really want strategy and tactics, I'll play a strategy and tactics game. So what are some of your favorite first-person games? Do you like modern military shooters, or do you prefer something a little more off the beaten path? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed what you heard, remember to hit like and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron of the new show. Alright, this is Random Rob. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.